Welcome to 2022 State of the Region for the Greater Lynn Chamber of Commerce. This is an event where we invite our municipal leaders out to really give us a feel as to what they've been doing and where they're going as a municipality, and really driving our region forward. So I'd like to first recognize some of our sponsors. Bridgewell, one of our silver sponsors. I saw Dennis, Cataldo Ambulance Services, and Deulis Brothers Construction Company. These are our silver sponsors here for this today. Bronze sponsors, we have For Insurance, Capano and McGloin, and Greater Lynn Senior Services. So thank you, our sponsors, for really making this event possible today. This event is also a component of our Government Affairs Committee. Our Government Affairs Committee is a committee that meets monthly, usually the second Wednesday of the month, but this month it's the third Wednesday. This is co-chaired by Bob Long from Cowdell Restaurant and Rick Starbird, City Councilor, and from Rick's Auto Collision. So, those are our two co-chairs, and I'm going to call Rick up in just a moment to get this started off. But I do want to recognize a couple other people in the room. We have Brian Field, City Councilor. Rick Bakius is here from Congressman Seth Moulton's office. We have Jim Cardell from EDIC, Sean Fitzgerald, Town Manager for Swampscott. Tony Barletta is going to be joining us shortly, and he's getting bacon right now. And Mayor Gerald Nicholson as well. Thank you. So Rick Starbird, if you want to come on up and say a few words and get us started. The microphone seems to do best when you're...
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all. Great to be back in person, isn't it? So thank you all for coming out this morning. I think we're going to pick up a wealth of information, find out what's on the table, what's going on for development in the region, and a lot of good information comes out of this meeting every year. And we'd also like to welcome you to our monthly meetings. We've been meeting down at Brotherhood Credit Union. You can meet on Zoom, but it's more fun to be in person. And every month we have something new with government affairs, whether it's the mayor, whether it's the council president, whether it's Jim Cowdell, and pick up a lot of great information there as well. So welcome you all this morning, and we welcome you down at Brotherhood Credit Union too on the second Wednesday of the month. Have a great day, everyone. And I'd like to introduce our Mayor Jared.
Thank you for the warm introduction.
Thank you, Rick. It's really been a pleasure working with Rick and his colleagues on the City Council. My name is Jared Nicholson. I just started in January, was elected in the fall, and can't tell you how excited I am to be here to share what's happening in Lynn on economic development here with the Chamber, with the Government Affairs Committee. I've been going to those meetings on and off for years now. At the last Chamber event, I reminded, and maybe I'll keep doing this at Chamber events, that I was the 2015 Lynn Chamber Rookie of the Year. So very excited to be here now in this capacity. So I'm going to be followed by our Director of EDIC, Lynn, who has been doing great work all around economic development, and he's going to be able to give you a lot of the bread and butter of economic development, a lot of the projects that are happening, some of the more traditional economic development type updates. I thought I would use this time to kind of take a step back and talk about what the city is doing from an overall perspective on economic development, and how you'll see how those particular specifics fit into that broader vision. So I think one of the biggest assets that our administration has right now is time. We just started the beginning of our term. Hopefully will be a long tenure, but for us to maximize the value of that asset, the time that we have, we need to have really good, thoughtful planning, good decision making about the long term. And if we can make those long-term investments, then we're really making the most of that asset at the time we have to start making the long-term investments now, to stick to a plan, and to be able to be around to see those investments pay out, working with all our partners in the city of Lynn. So I think an important step towards that goal of having a plan is that the city is working on preparing the city's first ever comprehensive plan. So a master plan for the city. We're working with a firm called Untitled that is running that planning process for us, and hopefully all of you are aware of that. And if not, we encourage you to seek that out. It's called Vision Lynn, and it's going to be a guide for the city about how we grow together. And one of the things I've done as I've gotten started is reaching out to other mayors to get their advice, particularly mayors who have had success around economic development, because I know that we have so much potential here. And this is one of the pieces of advice that people really highlighted, that how important it is to have a master plan that we have broad buy-in to, that we can stick to, that we can use to guide our decision making. And so this is really a priority for us in our administration. And I think the overall goal there, in thinking about the master plan and the growth that we see the potential for our administration, is to make the most of that opportunity for growth, and to do it in a way that's inclusive, that really benefits the community, that includes all corners of the city. And for us to be successful, we really want to see both parts of that, the growth and for it to include all of us. So these long-term investments, thinking about it from a capital perspective, right? And I'm going to talk about capital in a broader sense to sort of try to tee up what I think we're doing across a lot of different issues, because we are working on a lot of different issues. And the reason is that they're all connected. The goals that we have for economic growth hinge on us being able to do something about the cost of housing for our residents. And wanting to do the work we want to do in the schools is going to get our students the skills they need to thrive in the workforce. So these issues are connected, and therefore we need to be making progress on them across the board. On the economic side of things, last night, the Lynn City Council approved our budget, which I'm very excited about. So, okay. So I've been talking to a dead bike for the last 10 minutes. Yeah. But no one said anything, so I assume you can all hear me. Yeah. Great. So the budget is balanced, which obviously is an important goal. But I think more than that, it's a continued commitment to the kind of fiscal discipline that the previous administration, Mayor McGee and his team teed us up with. That's really starting to pay off. As many of you know, we were really in a dark spot a few years ago fiscally, and we are in much better shape. And that's going to require a continued commitment to fiscal discipline. And we're not out of the woods. And because of the economic headwinds that we face, we're going to continue to have to make some hard choices and sacrifices to be able to stay on that trajectory. But it is so important because we're starting to see it pay off in that we can make the kind of long-deferred capital investments that are so important to the health of the city. And the headline one there is the fact that we need a new school. But there's a lot of others as well. And so we're going to continue on that path, bringing that kind of fiscal discipline and planning to not just our operating budget, but the capital budgeting as well, so that we can be making those investments over time. A piece of good news there on the fiscal side is that we have the capacity to make these capital investments, in part because of the opportunity we have with the ARPA funds. And hopefully you've seen the fact that we've been working with the City Council the last few months to really gather input from across the community about how to make the most of that opportunity, and are very close to putting together a package that we think is going to be really exciting for the city, and really taking care of our treasured assets, our parks, our roads that get around the city, and making progress on one of the top issues that we face in the cost of living and affordable housing. So that's on the economic side. On the physical capital, I think that this is one of the most important things that we do in economic development. You know, things like tax incentives are a tool that we have, and we'll use those as needed and as appropriate. And I think Jim will mention one of those that we did recently. But I don't think about tax incentives when I go on bed at night thinking about what we're going to do for the city. I think about the investments we're going to make in our infrastructure, because that's what attracts the investment. That's what shows that developers, our partners, our people that we want to come to the city, that we're serious about making progress as a community, and that's what we can control. And that's also what makes sure that when the city's doing its part of making ourselves ready and attractive for growth, that's what's teeing up our residents to be able to get the best deals so that the development is benefiting them as well. So these investments in physical capital are really important, and obviously the Pickering is a headline project there because it's addressing one of the top needs that we face as a community. We've had an explosion in the number of students, which the Lynn Public Schools has done a commendable job in handling. And in some ways, you take a step back, it's a really strong endorsement of what we do in the Lynn Public Schools, the fact that so many families want to trust their students to our system. And it's also creates that obligation on our part to deliver the education that they deserve. And one of the things we need to do to get there is to improve our facilities, both because they're old and out of date, and because we don't have enough space. So the Pickering Middle School is the focus for the new school in the moment. That's what we can afford. That's what we're working with the MSBA on. But we're going to have to do a lot more than that to address this issue. And so one of the things we've teed up to be able to be in that position, that when we do have the funds available to do new schools beyond the Pickering, we're ready to know we want to do that. So we're funding a facilities plan for the elementary so that we know what the needs are at the elementary level. Another big piece of infrastructure that we're focusing on in the city is around transportation. And the previous administration has really teed us up for success in some major projects that we're going to continue to bird dog and deliver on. And one of the biggest ones is the reconstruction of Western Ave, which is a huge corridor for the city. It needs a lot of attention, and I think will make a big difference for how we get around the city. And there's currently $50 million coming from the state to do that project. There's about a dozen other ones, major roadways in the city that are going to be addressed over the next several years. And it's an exciting time because not only does the city have access to these kind of federal revenue that's coming from Washington, but the various federal and state agencies are flush with cash too, because some of these stimulus programs have gone to them. And so we're really trying to be aggressive about going out and getting those dollars to come to Lynn. So that includes right out here in Linfield Street. It includes Blossom Street, extension across the Lynnway to try to create more of a connection with our waterfront and to maximize the value of some of the investments that are happening down there, some of the private investments. Obviously, public transit is another key priority for the city, one that we have less control over, but one that we take just as seriously. It's the right thing for our residents, it's good for the environment, it's going to be good for our traffic, and the city of Lynn deserves rapid transit and has for decades. So the state and federal government have committed to support financing for the reconstruction of the MBTA Central Square Station. We have been supporting our state delegation, Senator Crichton, Representative Kate Campano, on a push to try to electrify the commuter rail, and we are continuing to advocate for trying to bring a ferry to the city of Lynn. And, you know, that's a priority for a lot of folks here. We also have made a really strong commitment to the aesthetic part of our physical capital and trying to make progress on trash and litter. And for those of you who are interested, there's a lot that we're doing there that I'll be happy to walk you through. For human capital, one of the top issues facing our residents is the cost of living. Close to half the city is cost burdened by housing, and we owe it to those folks to come up with solutions. It's an issue that is beyond the city of Lynn. It's regional in some ways, it's national in some ways, but it's also a huge issue for our residents, and so we're committed to implementing the Housing Lynn plan to make progress on that issue. We also want to take that kind of planning and strategy that we have for housing and bring that to workforce development so that we're getting our residents the skills they need to thrive in today's economy. And so we're going to be working with MAPC to put together a stakeholder group that I think we'll be coordinating with the chamber on as well to come up with a strategy for workforce development. And then finally, this is touching everything that we're doing and trying to make the most of the strengths of our residents is bringing diversity, equity, inclusion work to what we do in the city. We have a tremendous diversity, equity, inclusion officer that's in my office in Faustino Cuevas, and we've really been committed to improving language access in City Hall, reflecting the diversity of the community and the hires that we make in the city, and also bringing those diversity, equity, inclusion skills to City Hall. So again, I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful to be able to share it with our partners and neighbors in Swampscott and Nahant, both of whom have very generously reached out and offered to support me as I've started my administration. Really appreciate the collaboration and the support, and very much look forward to working with both of you and with all of you in the coming years. Thank you so much.
And this is why we elect a mayor with a good speaking voice. Because when the mic goes out, he can still make it work. Now I want to introduce Jim Cardell, Executive Director from EDIC.
Thank you, Tom. Perhaps we should have the mayor repeat his speech now that we can hear. I want to thank the mayor for his leadership. I can't believe it's only been 6 months, but he has a very inclusive style of leadership. He's working collaboratively with the city council, and you can see that every day. He's put together a great team. In fact, his chief of staff is with him today. His other half, her due date was yesterday, so if you see John Tebow sprinting out of the building, we'll know what happened. But the mayor's team has been fabulous. He put together an economic development team, which was critical. Prior to that, a developer walked into City Hall. They got shifted around to 5 or 6 other departments. And so today, when a developer comes into City Hall, they are put together with the development team made up of the mayor, usually the ward councilor, EDIC, the housing, ISD, planning, community development, so that the developer is getting feedback from all those different perspectives, and it's really been working well. So Mayor, thank you for everything. We did an economic development study, and really what the study said is if you want the downtown to thrive, the city needed more people living there. In the last 2 years, over 500 people have moved into the downtown, and we really feel, you know, finally, if we can put COVID in the rearview mirror, you'll see a bunch of new businesses supporting all of those residents that now call downtown their home. So this is a picture of Monroe Street. That vacant lot, it was vacant for 25, 30 years. That was before. Today, that vacant lot is that. Someone said, wow. So that's the Caldwell. So a fun fact, I know you're interested in this, but 1800s, there was a shoe factory there called the Caldwell. So that's why it's named that. So the next time you drive by, you can tell your friends and families that's the Caldwell. But over 300 people now live in that building. Baldwin Street, that's right off of Union Street. That was a vacant lot. It's been vacant since I can remember. Today, they are finishing up on the Mosaic, which is right there. That'll bring 146 units to downtown. It will also have 3,500 square feet of retail, which is very important. So that project is finishing up. The mayor has really put it on our radar to make life science a priority, to bring them to Lynn. The mayor and the city council recently, 2 months ago, passed a life science ordinance that will allow life science companies to come to Lynn by right. Lynn is only one of 2 in the entire state that is a member of the Mass Bio Council. So we go to all of the conferences. That's the group, Mass Bio Council, where all of the life sciences are members of. So the city of Lynn is there giving out business cards, introducing ourselves, telling them how close we are to Boston, that we have an able and willing workforce, and that we are a partner. So I think that you'll see life sciences come to Lynn in the very near future. This is the old Gorelick Farms. A.W. Perry has bought that. We've been working closely with the mayor and the city council to put commercial tenants in the front part of that building. And on the rear part, and you can't really see it in this picture, but there's about over 10 acres in the rear. We would love to see life sciences built there. It's in the industrial part of the Linway, so we're working closely with them on that, so you should hear more about that as we move forward. The item building was vacant for over 10 years. It's no longer vacant. EDIC was part of the financing on this deal. There are 30 apartments right there and 7 commercial tenants, and they're starting to fill up the commercial tenants. They're a little bit, I talked to them yesterday, it's almost to 60% filled now with residents. If you live there, you literally could walk across the street, hop on a train and be in Boston in 22 minutes. So, and it's right in the middle of the Arts and Cultural District, so we're really happy that that building is no longer vacant. The Linway Mart, you know, this is the only place in the world that would have a flea market right on the Atlantic Ocean. And so that building, we should have a moment of silence because it got torn down last month. So that building is gone, and it's part of the plan, right? When you look at the Linway, it drives me crazy to see what's there, you know, as far as fast food, used car lots, etc. We can do better, and we have a plan now in place. And so mass merchandise is gone. It's being replaced with a 2-phase project. Construction will begin this year on that project, and it will also activate the waterfront. So behind mass merchandise, there will be a public area and access for the public to come down and enjoy that area that really hasn't been utilized. So this is an aerial of the waterfront. There's development happening. The North Harbor, which is down by North Shore Community College, is done. That was a $120 million project. That was on a vacant lot for 40 years. And you can see in the middle, right, that green space, that's the former landfill. So like when I was a kid, all of the city's trash got put into that landfill. We now have a plan to create a regional park that is there. Let's take a closer look. Whoops. And so that, I think it's 30 acres, Matt? 30 acres of green space that we're creating. So we don't want these silos of development to happen as these projects get developed. We want to create neighborhoods reflective of the community. We want to have green space so that you can come down. There will be 2 parks on both ends of that green space. And then it's about 80 feet high, believe it or not. So you'll have these paths that will bring you up, and the view will be incredible. And so we're going to transform a landfill into a regional park, and we will do that with the partnership of the state, mass development in the city of Lynn, and it will really transform. You'll have a boardwalk. Eventually you'll have a boardwalk that will go from the MDC Rotary all the way to the GE Bridge. So you're going to see in the very near future development, but you're also going to see this green space that will activate the area. Solion is coming to Lynn, and you're saying, who's Solion? Solion is a great company out of Belmont that the mayor and I met with, and they are definitely coming to Lynn. They specialize in the development and manufacturing of smart textiles, and we offered a tax incentive that was unanimously approved by the council. And what that does on the tax incentive, they bring 105 jobs to the city of Lynn. These are high-paying jobs. The salary will be about $87,000 a year. The tax incentive specifies that those jobs get preferential to Lynn residents. When you look at the market basket tax incentive, it created 300 jobs, 90% of them went to Lynn residents. So we anticipate the same for this. High-paying jobs. The other thing that the mayor felt strongly about was to develop a partnership with this company, and Rick was involved with this too, Rick Stafford, developing a partnership with Lynn Tech and also North Shore Community College as a feeder program for those jobs. They just received a state grant for $1 million. They have a huge contract with the Department of Defense. So you'll be seeing them. They're located right off of Lower Washington Street. So you'll be hearing about them. We're bringing manufacturing jobs back to Lynn, and I think that's awesome. So this is the second project. So you're seeing we have a plan in place, and then what you'll start to see, mass merchandise, gone. This is, I think it was called the North Shore Auto Mall. Been there for a long time. It was a used car lot. So that is now going to be replaced with this. This is a beautiful mixed-use project. It's at 811 Linway for a reference point next to Starbucks. And so we think that that is, so you take a used car dealership, you replace it with this, but that's only part of the story. So the developer, the mayor talked about affordable housing, right? And it's a top priority for the city of Lynn. We were able to sit down with the developer, with the development team, and negotiate a donation of $3 million. That $3 million will go into a restricted account with the city of Lynn that can only be used for affordable housing, right? So it'll help create affordable housing in the city of Lynn. So that's the first time in Lynn's history that we ever got a donation from a developer strictly for affordable housing. So we're really proud of that. That was a great job, man. And finally, COVID, and Colin was my partner on this with the North Shore Latino Business Association, but COVID, I've never seen anything impact businesses like COVID. I was reading yesterday, 17% of all restaurants in the country went out of business permanently from COVID. And so I'm really proud that the city of Lynn stepped forward. We were able to give out 951 grants to businesses. So 951 businesses got over $9 million in grants, and a little bit over 80% of those businesses were minority and female. So Colin, thank you for your partnership on that. We're really proud of that. And I think that's it. So thank you very much, Colin. Thank you for your partnership.
All right, keep this line moving. We're going to invite Tony Barletta from the town of Nahant to come up.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Chamber. Thank you to the mayor and Sean for all your help. And I have a couple members of my staff here, Allison Nieto, my finance director, and Kristen Taylor, my administrative assistant. I think, you know, any mayor or town administrator wouldn't be able to stand up here and, you know, tout their success without a good staff. And one of the biggest issues, you know, today is the retiring of many municipal staff throughout the Commonwealth. And, you know, we've been really lucky in Nahant to recover through many retirements by hiring great talent. And like I said, you know, my staff has been extraordinary. So I thank them. And you know, Mayor McGee was such a great influence on me, and Sean's a great influence on me. So we're happy to be trying to repay the favor with Mayor Nicholson and keep that momentum going with our three communities, you know, speaking constantly and working together as a region. So, you know, we have a ton of issues going on in Nahant, just similar to many of our neighboring towns. You know, everyone in my position has this puzzle to try to fit the pieces into. It's just a different. You got different pieces, you got different, you know, politics in the town or financial issues, or, you know, and so for Nahant, you know, our biggest challenge, I think, with any of our topics is our revenue stream is 98% residential and taxes. So because of Prop 2.5, where our budget is very limited year to year. So we're constantly trying to think of new ways to bring in revenue, you know, a huge push on state aid and grants and things of that nature to try to find new ways to attack some of these challenges. And obviously, as a peninsula in the Atlantic Ocean, climate change is at the top of our list, and was at the top of our list, you know, 2 years ago, but the last 2 years, public health has been such a big issue for us. These things have kind of dropped down, but now we're thankfully on the other side of that pandemic, and, you know, really bringing these issues back to the forefront. Aging infrastructure, every community has it, we do too. A lot of our roads, buildings, underground utilities were all you know, born 50 years ago, and they are all falling apart, so we're trying to find ways to improve upon that. Believe it or not, housing is definitely a hot topic for the town. We're putting some, extra looking into more on the planning side. We're in the very early stages of it. And like I said, financial standing is at the top of our list every year. And lastly, technological advancements. So climate change preparedness, we look at it as a whole picture of many different little pieces. So we have your bylaws, your local ordinances that are going to try to incentivize or prevent private property from eliminating drainage or causing problems for their neighbors. So in 2019, the town voted to adopt a local wetlands protection bylaw, which actually expands the state wetlands protection bylaw. And just this past town meeting, we voted to enhance our stormwater bylaw. So really trying to prevent, neighbor on neighbor additions or paving or things that are going to have that negative effect. So that, while the town is doing everything we can as a community, the residents are bought into the same idea. Preventative infrastructure, so these are your coastal banks, your dunes, your seawalls, riprap. I mean, I've become somewhat, I never once knew any of those terms 3 years ago, but now I know, how a wave crashes and where the energy goes. But we're investing significantly into that. We have our Short Beach Dune, 40 Steps, the coastal bank there, and Willow Road revetment are 3 critical pieces of infrastructure for our town that help protect us from that sea level rise. And just this past town meeting, we passed an article that, Allison and I, and speaking with some of the other coastal communities up and down the coast, tried to take a different approach of how to take advantage of this future grant funding that's going to be available, especially through the ARPA funds. So we went to town meeting and asked the town to authorize us borrowing of $500,000 that we can use as the local match portion of these grants that are going to come available, and use it for technical assistance in developing those grant proposals. So a lot of these grants are 25% match from the town. Now, recently they've even reduced it to either 0 or 10% match. So for like the Short Beach Dune project, that's going to be an application for like a $3.25 million project. And with this appropriation, we have our local match already approved, which gives us a little bit of an advantage when we're going through the application process. So we're trying to think ahead and how we're going to be able to take our local dollars and maximize them with match from the state or from the federal government. Responsive infrastructure and equipment is, there's bound to be, there's no way we're ever going to be fully protected from some of these storms. So the water is going, the seawater is going to rise. It's going to come over in these big storms, and we're going to experience flooding. How quickly can our town respond to that? In March of 2018, those storms in the early part of the month, high tide, it never went to low tide for 4 days. So we had neighborhoods in 2 feet of water for 3 or 4 days. That's, we can't have that. We have to improve upon that. So we've been hiring engineers to look at our stormwater systems, purchasing portable 8-inch diesel pumps that we can come and de-water an area. We've purchased high water vehicle so that we can, if we need to, take residents out of their homes, we can get them out of there safely. We're looking at CERT teams and improving upon our shelters. So, it's again part of that puzzle of it's going to happen and how are we going to respond to it quickly and effectively. And then observation and planning. So, becoming an MVP community, upgrading our hazard mitigation plan. All those things are kind of looking at the big picture and identifying where that critical infrastructure is going to be. And we also invested or appropriated about $100,000 this last year, in this last town meeting, to hire an outside company that's going to come in and actually drone footage the entire coastline of the town. And with that drone footage, they're going to be able to measure how much volume we have on each of those properties of sand, or where the sea level rise, may be in a couple years. And then they're going to come back after every storm and see how that's changed. So in the future, if we cross-reference, again, I can't believe I'm even saying this at this level of technical information, but in the future we'll actually be able to cross-reference, the type of storm that's being predicted to come in by wind speed, temperature, the time it's going to hit based on whether it's high tide and how high that tide is going to be. And then we're going to look at the past storms and what those impacts were, and now we can deploy our response equipment to those areas faster and improve upon that. So a lot of work around climate change, and it's going to be a top issue for us for many years to come. Aging infrastructure, our sewer system has been one of our largest problems. We've had a lot of breaks on the Lynnway. So our biggest project, our number one priority, was repairing our sewer main that from the Lynnway Rotary up to Commercial Street. So if you've seen, if you've been in that traffic, I apologize. We're almost done with it, and then we'll be out of there. But we're actually slip lining the existing sewer line. We're going to get 50+ year life on that. So we shouldn't be out there in the next 50 years after we get through this month. So it should be resolved by that. We've just approved an additional $18 million borrowing through the state's revolving loan account, which is a low interest long-term loan. And we had that based on a 10-year capital plan. So the next part is our main sewer station in Nahant needs $5 million worth of work. We have the other part of of our sewer main that goes along the causeway. We have another force main in town, and II work throughout the community, making sure that it's only wastewater getting into those pipes, and we're not paying to clean rainwater or water that shouldn't be getting in there for no reason. So a lot of work on our sewer system. We just voted this past year too to appropriate $125,000 to look at a public safety building study. So both of our police station, which is an old school that was moved across the street, our fire station, which is an old military garage, are both falling in on themselves. So we're taking the first step to bring in an outside firm to kind of look at what our needs are, and maybe it makes sense for us to combine the two into one large building. Maybe it means 2 new buildings, but again, in the very early stages of that. We're taking advantage of the 0% interest loan with the MWRA program so that we can invest in our water lines as well. And our roadways and sidewalks and street signs. We have a lot of ADA issues in town with our sidewalks, so we're trying to improve. We're utilizing the MBTA ADA improvement program a lot with that as well. And the Community Preservation Act is heavily utilized in the town of Nahant. So we use a lot of that for recreational spaces, historical restoration, and housing as well. As I mentioned, housing is a big issue for us. I spoke a little bit about this at last year's meeting, and we're getting to the point now through the summer that we'll be soon hiring a company to come in and actually eliminate the old Coast Guard housing that is at the end of Castle Road towards Bass Point. The town voted last year to clear the land and basically sell them as 12 individual lots. So in September, we'll be moving into that process. We just got a CPA grant for $75,000, like I said, to get into a housing plan. Very early stages there. And we're also waiting for the MBTA community multifamily zoning guidelines to come out in their second draft. The town, Nahant, is considered MBTA community, so we fall under those guidelines that require a certain amount of multifamily zoning. It's very awkward for Nahant because we're the guidelines that originally came out just affected our town so differently because we're so small, and we're actually farther than a half mile away from the nearest major station. So we're working closely with DHCD to find out how those guidelines are going to affect our town and how we can be compliant. Financial standing. Since when I came in 2018, the town was not using free cash effectively. We were increasing our operating budget beyond what our revenues were coming in. So we originally in 2018, we did a general override to kind of offset that balance and slowly turn the ship in the right direction. And we have continuously over the last 3 or 4 years. This year, our operating expenses is just a slight increase of 2.9%, which really for our town, like I said, because we're so limited basically by that Prop 2.5 state law, we have to stay between 2.5% and 3.5% on our general expenses, and that's what we did. We were also able to provide some decreases in our water and sewer enterprise account and in our cultural recreation. Our biggest thing is our bond rating because we're so limited on that revenue. We have to go out for borrowing a lot to pay for some of these bigger projects that I was talking about. So making sure we have a good bond rating so that we can get those lower interest loans is important to us. And part of that is building up your reserves, paying down your debt, and managing your revenues effectively. So 2 of the biggest items there is OPEB and stabilization. OPEB is other post-employment benefits. That is a liability that gets factored into your bond rating. In fiscal year 19, when I first came in, there was only $3,000 in that account. Since then, we're up to $100,000. In our stabilization account, which is basically our rainy day fund, we only had $93,000, and as of the last town meeting, we're now at $668,000, which is 5% of our 5% of our budget, which is what's recommended by the state. We're still going to continue to push for that. Our hope is to get to 10%, and we're also paying more than our minimum requirement on debt in this past year. A lot of that is because of the ARPA funds. So because we had all this extra help from the ARPA funds, we didn't have to spend as much of our own general money, so our free cash went way up, but utilizing it the right way is important for your community, and so we are 100% of our free cash this year is going towards one-time expenses. It's not going towards employee costs. It's going towards buying a new piece of equipment for our DPW or our police station, our fire department, investing in other capital projects, or, as I mentioned, replenishing those reserves. And then lastly, technological advances. So again, when I came into Nahant in 2018, a lot of what we did and still do is paper and pencil. And a lot of, oddly, our town, our residents really enjoy coming into the town hall in person to pay or interact with the folks in the staff. The online options that we've introduced haven't really taken off yet, but we are introducing them anyways. We're trying to get there. But that's not just for them, it's for our staff as well. So, especially through this last 2 years, we've understood the importance of being able to remotely dial in. As far as committee meetings or elected board meetings, we're still operating under the recent, being able to remote dial into these public meetings, so doing Zoom and things of that nature. We're waiting for the legislature to see what they do in July, but it's proven that it has the value, and we're trying to take advantage of that momentum. So we've introduced a new website this past year, which was long overdue, and we actually worked with a developer to create an online version of how to submit a committee meeting notice, which for our town was becoming problematic because of the 48-hour requirement by law to post that notice in advance of your meeting. So now we can do those members, those volunteers, those elected members, they can actually submit that through our website electronically. It's processed electronically by our clerk. It's posted in a more efficient manner, and people who are subscribed to our website get updates that those committees are meeting. So it's a much better way to communicate with our public. And then probably the biggest thing for our town is the introduction of Munis, which is a software system of how we manage our finances in the town. So Allison has the lucky job of actually implementing that over the next year. It's going to take a lot of time, take a lot of work, but we're actually going to be able to, our departments will be able to look electronically at their budgets, see where they are throughout the fiscal year, make purchase orders, pay invoices, and once we bring that into place, meanwhile, we are working with the town of Swampscott on a potential regionalization of human resources. And we may even bring in, adopt some of the softwares and programs that Swampscott uses so that we can work together on handling those, benefits, coordination, and payroll, and time and attendance, and things of that nature. So a lot of little things that probably a lot of little things that are you don't really see, from the public view, but make a huge difference for how we're able to, improve our services to our residents. So, thank you for having me, and Sean. I want to introduce Sean Fitzgerald from Swampscott, because usually he's introducing me, and I got the bump up in the batting lineup today. So, Sean's, like I said, Sean's been a tremendous resource for me. He works very hard over in Swampscott and answers every one of my calls, so I thank Sean, and here he is.
Tony, you're fantastic. You can get bumped up anytime. I'm happy to clean it up. What a great day. Look, this is so fascinating for me to hear from my colleagues. Mayor, you are leading the most important city in this region, and it's exciting to hear your vision. We're all working incredibly hard to build a more inclusive North Shore. Swampscott's doing its part, but Tony, you've been a great colleague. The things that you're doing for Nahant are complicated. People think that running a big city is hard, and it is. It's, in my experience, even more challenging in a smaller town because you have so many stakeholders that you need to work with. This is democracy, and when it's at that elemental level, it can be complicated. I want to thank Dennis Cataldo. Well, we're pulling up the really interesting financial presentation that I can't wait to share with you. Dennis, is he? Yeah, Dennis. Look, we've gone through a pandemic. You and your team helped keep Swampscott safe, and it's important for people to recognize the extraordinary work that our partners do. We're communities that, our most important responsibilities are to protect the life safety of our residents, and as town administrators and managers and mayors, we're up around the clock thinking about how do we keep people safe, and our partners with our ambulatory services or public safety departments really risked tremendously during this pandemic. They were on the front line, and I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful for the partnership that both Mayor McGee and Nahant showed Swampscott. We had testing regionally, and we had shared strategies. This is not North and South Korea. We are literally one region, and we work together to help protect life safety. And we, I think, did some extraordinary work, and it was complicated. But we're on the other side of that, and I'm really excited that. Do you want me to do my IT stuff? I'm good at this, Colin.
Go to Tara.
Yeah.
PDF is right there.
All right, just pull up the PDF, and I'll just. Okay. Here we go. We're going to do PDF. So, hey, we're at the chamber. Last night, we had a special town meeting, so I feel like I'm in that meeting. You go to bed at a meeting at 10 o'clock, and then you're waking up, and you're like, hey, you're off to another meeting. But, we're going to talk a little bit about finance, budget, and taxes. So, since 2015, we've had 400% increase in general stabilization, 500% increase in capital stabilization, 388% in OPEB stabilization, other post-employment, and a 2,000% increase in our unused levy capacity. So the average increase in the median single-family tax bill has been less than 1% or 0.78. Those are the metrics of Swampscott's finances. Our reserves, quite frankly, have been built up dramatically since 2018. I started in 2017, but we've really supported that constant gardening approach. We wanted to look at how do we build our financial position. We looked at every single line in our budget. We added, probably 40 other lines. We looked at where we were spending and how we were spending. We looked at 10 years worth of experience. We knew exactly, based on behavior, what we needed. And so we carefully tightened up the budget. That helped develop a little bit of free cash. We reset our parameters. We had free cash in our budget back in 2017 when I started. Those are one-time revenues that we're budgeting for reoccurring expenditures. And so we wanted to build stability. So we got rid of free cash. It was difficult, though, because we had contracts that were going up over the 2.5%. And so we had to have a lot of really careful conversations. But now, we're in a really good financial position. Our average single-family tax bills are high. You probably can't see it, or, over the last few years, Swampscott has had, this is a comparison to Essex County, 34 cities and towns. Swampscott had the third highest average single-family tax bill. That's no surprise to anybody. Everybody knows that Swampscott's an expensive town. Over the last 5 years, though, we've actually started to try to get back down to a place that is a little bit more reasonable. So as it sits today, our taxes are about $1,100 more than the average single-family tax bill. When we look at the average single-family tax bill growth over the last 10 years, in Massachusetts, they've gone up about 35%. In Swampscott, it's gone up about 7.5%. When we look at the highest tax bills in Massachusetts, 10 years ago, we were the 23rd highest tax bill, and today we're the 42nd highest tax bill. That's not something that I like to brag about because we're still, at that highest tier, but we're getting better. And again, we've kept our taxes steady. Here's a spaghetti chart. It's probably hard to see, but I'm just these are 34 cities and towns tax rates. It ranges, 5 years ago, we were the third highest tax bill in Essex County. Now we're moving towards the middle of the pack. Mayor, you may be pleased to hear that Lynn has got one of the most affordable tax bills in Essex County. I know some residents may not, agree with me, but this is the data. Swampscott's trying to become more affordable, but it's not easy. Here's our budget. We have $78 million. Basically, we've kept this budget steady. I've been moving things around. We're getting older, we're living longer, but we need more investments in senior services. Over the last 5 years, our average budget for our senior center was $95,000. We had a number of part-time employees. It was nice. Today, as we presented our budget this year, $230,000. Full-time director, full-time assistant, and community engagement coordinator. We have an all-ages focus, and for me, that's part of building community. Every community is a little different, but in Swampscott, we're getting grayer faster than any other community in Essex County, and we've got to think about how do we meet the needs of our demographics. When we look at our operating expenses, over the last 5 years, we've really kept this budget steady. We do look at every line in the budget. We try to keep our budget at a 2% growth plus new growth. And so new growth is if we build a new development, if we have a new restaurant, we take that new growth, we cap it at $425,000. So we are building a steady budget. And it forces discipline through collective bargaining contracts. It forces us to live within our means so that we can balance all of the other priorities. When we look at parks, or when we look at capital investments, or building new schools, or making investments in open space, if you don't have management of your budget, you can't do everything. If you can have those critical conversations, you can balance your priorities. So we're going to talk a little bit about our new school and open space. So there's the Hadley School. Anybody familiar with the Hadley School? My grandmother was a school nurse at the Hadley School, and it's interesting for me. My great-grandparents moved to Swampscott in the 1920s from Haverhill. My great-grandfather was a commercial artist. This is what you get, I guess, when you have a commercial artist in your gene pool. But they moved to this beautiful town and raised six wonderful kids. 2 of them served in World War II. 1 got the Bronze Star in the Battle of the Bulge. And it's incredibly important for me that we hold a legacy for public service. But that's a beautiful school, but it's old. 1911. It was one of the oldest. It's still one of the oldest actively utilized schools in Massachusetts. Last fall, we approved a $98 million twin school for Swampscott. That's a huge milestone. Swampscott 7 years ago, tried to approve a new school, but it was voted down at town meeting. And after 6 years of really difficult budget work, that school was approved overwhelmingly by referendum from the town. And that puts us on a path to really build this amazing twin school that is going to help ensure that we continue the legacy of investing in our young citizens and giving them the quality of education that they deserve. This is a consolidated school. It's hard for communities to consolidate, really is. We're so parochial, everybody wants a neighborhood school, but when you're in a town of 3 square miles, everything's a neighborhood school. And we needed to help everybody understand that if we were going to keep some balance of financial prudence, we had to consolidate. And frankly, this was, it's still a complicated project. It's still complicated to work with neighborhoods, but we're committed to ensuring that this project really does work. It's a tough economy to build anything, but we're moving forward, and frankly, we're excited to break ground over the next few months. So here's the vision. The space utilization is going to be extraordinary when you think about new schools. If you go into the Hadley School today, it's dark. It's has that 1911 kind of architect, very functional, but certainly doesn't really have that space, that really inspires education. So this is going to be a really awesome school. I'm going to pivot to open space. So here's Swampscott, busy. So this is a community that has been settled, 300 years ago. There's very few pieces of open space. We've identified a couple of parcels that we wanted to acquire. We have an open space committee. For years, they have been looking at building and acquiring open space. We have a few parcels up in the top quadrant of town that last night at town meeting, we were able to get town meeting approval to acquire these parcels. We have one of these parcels, this top parcel, we have a purchase and sale negotiated with for $400,000. The other parcel we're working on negotiating the sale, but this would really help protect this area of town from the type of development that really brings that congestion. We need more open space, and it abuts right up to a park in Lynn. And when you think about congestion, think about the world we live in. Look, Swampscott has a commitment to build affordable housing. We want affordable housing. We want to play a role in building a more inclusive North Shore. But we also have to create open space to help protect the mental health and the welfare of our citizens. And we have really tight neighborhoods. We have small little plots, and we've got to find a way to build more parks. So here's just a picture of the open space. Here's the park in Lynn. These are beautiful parks in the making. When you walk these parks, you can actually see the skyline of Boston. They sit in a wonderful little neighborhood. You can see the aggregate quarry over here. We do have some industrial land in Swampscott, just in case you're wondering. These are really strategic, and I think they're great for the region. It's great for Swampscott, great for Lynn, and it helps protect our neighborhoods and really give some extraordinary open space to the region. So last night, town meeting voted to acquire the Hawthorne by the Sea, and yeah, it's a big deal. Yes, it is a big deal. $7 million over the last 18 months. I've been meeting with Anthony Athanas, and I want to thank the Athanas family. This was not easy, but it was certainly important. When we look at the waterfront in Swampscott, but frankly, all across the North Shore, having public places and spaces is so important to our quality of life. Mayor, I'm so excited about what you're doing with the waterfront in Lynn. As a kid who grew up in the North Shore, I, would go to Kings Beach, fly kites, and just enjoy that waterfront. We've got work to do to try to help ensure that our waterfront can continue to be a place where our region can celebrate our history and our incredible connection to the lore of maritime history. Swampscott has such a rich history. Somehow it just has been, I think, subordinated to some things. And I'm excited about a town that really is looking to kind of recapture that. We've got to figure out what the best design is for that. This is just a little bit of a architectural rendering. This is one of 1,000 ideas. We're committed to having a community process that brings the best of ideas. When we talk about visioning for the future, we have a master plan, and we plan the work, and then we work the plan. We want this park to be iconic. We want it to be the best park that we could possibly build. We need help from a state and federal level, because this should be one of our region's iconic parks for the public. And again, we're thinking about this as a town park, but I'm happy to have it be a state or a federal partnership too. This is something that is a once in a 100-year type of opportunity, and I'm really thrilled that Swampscott residents and taxpayers saw fit to support this. This is a town that is a high tax town, so it's not a given that they're willing to actually add that additional burden. But I think given the town's financial position, the fact that we have close to $10 million in reserves that we can use carefully to help pay down the debt service and make sure that when we acquire properties like this, we can pay a significant portion of it with our stabilization funds. We can we can start to carefully manage balancing the financial priorities for the town. So a few other updates. You know, we are working on resiliency. I have PowerPoints here. I can, if you want to stay till noon, I can pull them all up. You guys can hear a lot about our work to build a new pier. The pier was built in the 1960s. It's not resilient. It's going to get washed away in another storm. And folks, I mean, they're romantically tied to it because it's so iconic, but we need to build a pier that, not just so I can have a pina colada and enjoy it in a couple of years, but we need one that supports public safety, that helps support and activates our master plan for our waterfront. You know, we have a vision for a harbor and waterfront plan that celebrates Swampscott's history. We're building a rail trail. We're actually physically building a rail trail. My director of economic development and community development has been working very carefully with the CHIP program. 2 weeks ago, we were put on the transportation improvement plan and awarded $8.9 million to construct the trail. That's a big deal. We got the entire funding for the rail trail in Swampscott, and that's going to help Swampscott again be a more inclusive community, connect to other communities, and really support pedestrian safety. We're working with the City of Lynn on trying to figure out how we get the funding to address the infiltration and inflow into Stacey's Brook and into Kings Beach. It's not complicated. The PowerPoints on this. I got pictures of broken clay pipes that are getting infiltrated with stormwater, and it just is, it's a part of our region's history, and we need help to address that. Swampscott spent over $16 million over the last 10 years, you know, sleeving pipes and incrementally going through and ripping up neighborhoods and going through, plodding along. It's going to take us another 30 years to continue to do this, and we still don't know if we're going to get enough of the bacteria out of the brook to ensure that public safety will be paramount for that beach. So we've got a couple of strategies, but it's my hope over the next, frankly, few weeks, we can go up and talk to a Swampscott resident that continues to be in office and ask him to continue to help us as a region, you know, find the funding that would help protect that beach. That beach is historic, and we deserve to have a resource of both in Lynn and Swampscott that is safe for our citizens. And lastly, I just want to talk about mental health, and I want to talk about the importance of taking care of people. As a town administrator, my most important responsibility is to take care of our residents. This last couple of years, it has been incredibly demanding. We've done some extraordinary things. We've taken everybody's trash barrel because we had to manage the budget, but also the environmental responsibilities. They were difficult. It was difficult. We have more vitriol. We have more mean people saying mean things than ever before. I don't remember a time where, you know, we hear so much mean-spirited conversations. I've actually made a recommendation that we move to a 4-day work week. We've implemented it. And I'm trying to think more carefully about how do we help each other? How do we you know, I've got staff that are meeting, that literally meet 4 nights in a row. We have night meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week. You know, they put in 40, 50 hours a week in 3 and 4 days often. And town hall's open from 8 a.m. to noon on Fridays. It's not the most productive day anyways. And when I look at, you know, my responsibility to take care of the people that take care of the town, it was clear to me that we were running people ragged through this pandemic. The work-life balance disappeared, and I want to make sure that we actually, you know, support some of those broader responsibilities to people. You know, I'm excited about the potential that Swampscott has, but also the region has. I don't think we've ever been in a better position to do extraordinary things. What's awesome for me to think about is if we can actually, over 5 years ago, it was inconceivable that Swampscott could buy a waterfront property. We couldn't even build a brand new school. We had, you know, barely 2 nickels to rub together. Budgets were growing out of context. Just 5 short years later, we can do anything. The future is extraordinary. We're looking at Vinnon Square. We're looking at trying to figure out, do we need to have a road running right through that campus, or could we move it around? Could we create a little mini Linfield marketplace? Could we do things that would really ultimately define that broader potential? We're on the move, and frankly, I'm excited to you know, continue to see Swampscott do extraordinary things, but also with the region. I want to thank Tony and your extraordinary staff. I want to thank the mayor and his staff and the chamber, and happy to have everybody come over to the Hawthorne soon to get a popover and perhaps enjoy an afternoon on that extraordinary property. Thank you, everybody.
So one of my core tenets as a Chamber of Commerce is good food and on time. So I want to thank Rolly's Cafe for Rolly's Restaurant for being the caterer today. And in regards to ending on time, it's 9:40. Thank you guys all so much for coming out today. To our elected officials for presenting today, for our elected officials being here today, and our town managers. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon at many upcoming chamber events. Thank you.